rehab in Denver. I wish all those guys the best.
Open up for questions for Brad. First one, Brad, will be from Brian Robb.
Hey, Brad, just want to start asking about the acquisition of Derrick White. Is this a guy you guys been kind of eyeing for a while? I know Ime had a lot of familiarity with him, and what do you kind of envision for his fit in your guys' system?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've thought for years that Derrick was a really good fit with our best players. He is an excellent defender. He just makes the right play on offense over and over and over. He's a guy that only cares about winning, that will do all of the little things, as you can see in some of his, stats defensively with regard to willingness to put his body on the line, activity, shot challenges, all of those things. And on offense, just by making simple plays, and doesn't need to do anything to be on the highlights to really, really impact winning. So we've kind of identified him for a long time. The first time that I got a chance to watch him, for consecutive days in a row and really see even more or pique our interest anymore was watching him with the U.S. Select team years ago. And now, we felt really fortunate to be able to get a guy like that on a long contract that we think is, again, a perfect fit for our best players.
Next question is from Tim Bontemps.
Hey, Brad, just two things quick. First off, kind of how did the Theis deal come together? And second, did the way you guys played the past 2 or 3 weeks influence the way you guys approached the deadline in terms of going after Derrick in the way you did and kind of adding the way you did?
I would say that neither of those are just short-term moves, Tim. I think that we believe, first of all, again, Derrick's got 3.5 years left on his contract. And, we know that obviously when you're trading away, 2 really good perimeter players that have been part of our rotation, you got to get the perfect fit and a guy that can eat up a lot of those minutes and play at a super high level on both ends of the court to maintain, the stretch we're on. But the most important thing is that this is not just about the next 3 months with him. This is about, again, adding guys that you think and can see playing in a 7-game knockdown, drag out playoff series. And they can be on the floor and play, a role in helping you win. And obviously they do that very differently, but both of those guys can do that, and they both can do that for years to come. The Theis move came about really late. Initially we had talked to them a couple times over the past, few days, but that came about very late. We did not think that there was going to be anything there. And, in the last 20 minutes or so, that materialized as the whole move. Obviously, didn't necessarily anticipate that in the early part of the day, but had our eyes on Theis. And the reason why is because, Rob and Al are our guys and they're playing great. But if you miss any time with those 2 guys, you can plug Theis in and it'll be a seamless transition. Theis knows how to make our best players better. That's the best thing he does, is he has a great feel for making others around him better. He's got a savvy for the game and he can play a role. And so, if Rob misses a stretch, Theis can plug in and, and off the bench with Grant, if we play minutes without Rob or Al on the floor, Theis can play the exact role that those guys are playing now and do so at a high level. So it's insurance there at that spot with a guy that can do it at a high level.
Adam Himmelsbot.
Hey, Brad. I know trade deadline day can kind of go in any direction based on what other teams, agree to. Basically, can you kind of just lay out what your approach was going into the day, what you really wanted to accomplish, and how much you feel like you did in the end?
I don't know if it's the approach going into the day. It's the approach going, evaluating the first half of the season. And so, again, you're evaluating the season, you're seeing where you're headed, both in the near term and the long term. And you're doing your best to try to, accentuate that team in both of those circumstances. But, the long-term part is, was always at the forefront. We've obviously been on a good roll. And I think that, we have some great challenges coming up. This 4-game stretch before the break will be tremendous to get a chance to evaluate us. And, and so I'm looking forward to moving forward with this group. And, it's like I said, I thought all year that what we really needed to continue to focus on were adding guys that really know how to play, that make the right basketball decisions, and are, really have a great self-awareness to do what they do best and accentuate our best players.
Mark Murphy.
Hey, Brad, actually 2 questions. First, you've mentioned that you wanted to add shooting. Are you going to be a big player in the buyout market, looking for that kind of a player? And that's the main one. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, we think a lot like Josh, when Josh came here, when really evaluating Derrick and watching him throughout the course of his career, we think he'll really shoot the ball. And so also with Josh and Dennis being out, then there is also opportunities, off the bench, right? There's opportunities for a really good shooter in Peyton, for a really good shooter in Aaron. But we will look to fill our roster out with guys that are skilled, guys that again, have savvy, know how to play, but have great skill. And, I think that, we'll probably look to add a couple today, and then, we'll evaluate and go from there.
Gary Washburn.
Hey, Brad. You moved Romeo, Carson a couple months ago, and you've also traded 2 first-round picks. Is that an indication that you're not as high on the draft in the younger core? Like, you've definitely made some moves. You've cleaned house with the roster. You've got some additions to make, I think, like today, in order to field the team or for tonight. What has been your impression or your thoughts on the younger core in this draft? Because you've been open to moving picks, which hasn't been always the case in Boston, is the ability or the desire to trade first-round picks.
I mean, I think that's a really hard decision, Gary. I mean, the first round picks are really valuable, but getting a guy for 3.5 years on a great contract that is a perfect fit next to your best players is valuable too. And you're just weighing that. But no, I really value the pick. So I think a lot like we talked about this summer and moving last year's pick was we also did, we wanted to do a deal if we could that didn't encumber us moving forward. And I think that there are, the benefits of, the benefits of the deal we did are that, but it's not without its risk, but that's part of it. I think, I'm looking forward to having Derrick, and we think Derrick will be a really good player here. And again, a really good player around our best players. And so there's going to be a cost associated with that. And that's what it was. I think that I think in some cases our younger players, and you mentioned Carson and Romeo, but even a couple of guys that are still here, it's been somewhat a function of it's hard to break through the guys we have in front of them. And because, Jason plays 36, 37 minutes a game, Jalen's going to play a ton when he's out there. Those guys are both wings. And so there's only so many minutes left. And so you're fighting, especially when you have 15 deep, and 3 or 4 of them on your 11 through 15 have been just recently drafted guys. That's really tough, and because there's not a lot of minutes that are out in play on a normal night. And so, I think it's the balance there with that. It's just really difficult. Both those guys are good players. Obviously, Grant has found a way to establish himself within a role here. We think that both Peyton and Aaron, we have great belief that they'd be very good, if they're able to earn the opportunity. But that's what it is, and I think that that's just part of it. It's a hard league, and there's a lot of good players that once they find the right fit or the right opportunity can really shine.
We'll go back to Mark Murphy again, Coach. Brad?
Hey, Brad, just real quick, when are Derrick and Daniel going to be available?
Derrick is here. So he'll go through all of his, physicals and everything else, but then the San Antonio guys do the same. Daniel gets in later today. He'll do the same thing. Houston has to do the same. So I don't know necessarily when people will be available or not. That'll be dependent on everybody completing the physicals and the trade being, officially complete.
John Corrales?
Brad, this is your first trade deadline in your first year on the job. What was it like for you? I know you've been involved, but for you to be the guy that makes the final call, for you to be the guy that tells guys that they're traded, what was that all like?
No, I mean, that's really hard to tell guys that they're traded. I mean, that's by far the hardest part of all of this, other than obviously waiving somebody that takes a cake. But as far as making the decisions in the moment and everything else, it's just part of it. You go, you do the best you can, you try to prepare for that moment, just like you're coaching a game, and you make a decision and you move forward. So I think we felt good about our team as we headed in, but really good about our starting lineup. And we wanted to, again, try to accentuate, both within the near term and the long term. And, hopefully we did that. And we still, we have a lot of roster spots now to figure out how to continue to add to that.
Jared Weiss?
Coming into the season, you kind of had this dichotomy where you had your 4 core guys long term and everybody else was kind of locked in for 1 or 2 years. So now that you've really deepened your rotation with guys that are locked in long term, is this kind of continuing that plan to build around the Jays with a kind of deeper core, or has this been more of a shift based on their play?
Again, I just think what you want to do is hopefully accentuate your best players with people that, make great sense around them and have a great self-awareness of who they are. I think we've been fortunate to establish a real defensive identity, and so valuing all of that. And I do value the continuity aspect, especially for a new coaching staff. That's why it's hard to trade 7 guys, but the core of who's playing and the core of who we, will have moving forward, and being able to get a couple of guys that are, again, on contracts where you can build and grow together, I think is really important. I've coached a lot of defenses in my life, coached some really good ones in college and some really good ones here. I've never seen one this dynamic when it's locked in. And so I give Ime and his staff a lot of credit. I give the players a lot of credit. So to be able to add to that and be able to, hopefully, again, add the right offensive, firepower to accentuate those guys, are things that we value.
Follow-up question, Jared?
The pick swap in 2028 is a pretty substantial kind of off in the future type of piece that's usually reserved for making those kind of big third star acquisitions. So what was the thinking on the cost benefit analysis of including that?
Yeah, I mean, that can go either way, right? I mean, that can go either way. I mean, if you're, we'll lose, that's the one that you lose sleep over for a couple of days. But I think the analysis of that is we have, some really good players, and we have a person that we think fits in perfectly with them as another really good player, but can only make them better.
Thank you, Brad. We'll wrap it up right there.
Thank you.